Welcome back to a special edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie Schneiderite. It's going to be a signing day edition for the football program. Rutgers currently has 23 commitments who are going to be signing in this early period. And we wanted to run through each one and kind of give you guys some background because some of these guys committed a while ago. We haven't really heard a whole lot from them since. So just figured it made sense to go through them one at a time. We're going to go through them in terms of rivals rating from high to low. So we'll have the highest rated kids first, the lowest rated kids last. So let's just go right off the top. Our highest rated commit is also the number one player in the state of New York. That is Korey Duff. He is listed as a tight end. I think he could play wide receiver or tight end at the next level. 6'5", 207 is what Rivals has him listed at. Tell us a little bit about Korey Duff's game.
Superstar wide receiver, basically. He kind of emerged on the scene as a 3-star to start. Then he started putting on a little more muscle, starting to get into camps and stuff. Reminds me a lot of Ian Strong, but bigger and taller. Maybe not much taller, but he's very similar to his build. He is just a freak athlete. Like, he's got a crazy wingspan that helps him with a big catch radius. He's got great hands. There were times where we weren't even confident he was going to end up at Rutgers. We heard Miami was pushing for him a lot, and he went down to Miami right before the Rutgers commitment. But this is just a huge get for Rutgers, and you get back in state too. In the state of New York, a big reason that he committed is because of the relationships between him and Ian Strong. They're very close. Between him and Dylan Braithwaite, they're very close. A lot of these top-ranked New York kids really stick together, and they're all close with one another. He didn't have a huge season. He still had a pretty damn good season. I feel like he could have had a much better season if he had a quarterback. His quarterback ended up going to Fordham last year, and he had I forget who it was. It was a junior lax kid was their quarterback to start. And then he got hurt, and then someone else came in, and then he ended up even playing quarterback at one point for his high school team this year. So it's been quite the whirlwind of a season for him. But just to get this kid locked up, he still had almost 1,000 yards, actually. 929 yards and 9 touchdowns. I know he's listed as a tight end still, and I'm trying to get that fixed, but he will be a wide receiver at Rutgers. We'll see if that lasts or not. I know Rutgers likes to use their tight ends as blockers under Surace, more so than receivers. So I think that's why he probably sticks at receiver for now. But if you bulk him up and he becomes a good blocker, I mean, it might be a pretty damn good option at tight end. But really good get for Rutgers. Top 20 prospect top 20 tight end prospect currently. But again, trying to get that switched. I'd say he's probably one of the better receivers in the country and one of the best in the Northeast.
Yeah, you talked about this wasn't always a slam dunk that he would end up at Rutgers. He took his official visits to UNC, Miami, and Rutgers, and ended up ultimately choosing the Scarlet Knights. He had probably close to 25, 30 offers in general. One of the biggest commitments of the Greg Schiano 2.0 era. Just a really sure-handed, athletic, rangy, big slot type guy, similar, like you said, to Ian Strong, but he had one of the best catches of the high school season. It was like a crossing route. The guy threw it, his quarterback threw it, basically like almost hitting the ground as he's running full speed on a crossing route, somehow scooped it off the turf without it touching the ground. I don't have the clip in front of me, but it was one of the best catches I've ever seen in high school.
I think that was earlier in the season too.
It was one-handed, actually. I'm sorry. It was a one-handed catch.
No, he's phenomenal, man. And he got offers too afterwards. Like, even after committing, Tennessee came in and offered, and there was some pressure there to go visit there. Syracuse, as soon as Fran Brown was hired, that was one of his first phone calls. But good job at Rutgers, just kind of shutting all that down and basically saying, like, hey, you're coming to the Banks. You're not going anywhere else.
Yeah, huge addition, and really excited to see him on campus. He's going to be an early enrollee, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. So he will be on campus in probably January and get a full spring practice in. He's probably a guy that could make an impact year one, but ultimately that kind of also depends on how much size he's able to add to his frame and how much of the offense he's able to digest. And even a guy like Ian Strong this year, I thought he should have probably played more. I don't know if it's a Kirk Soraka thing where he tends to trust veterans more than young guys, but I expect Korey Duff to play in 2024 for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Next up on the list, we have Kaj Sanders, who's a safety from Bergen Catholic. This is a guy who I didn't foresee Rutgers landing, but they were able to pull this one off as well. Tell us a little bit about Kaj Sanders.
Yeah, Bergen Catholic kid, super athlete, super DB. He plays running back. He's played a little bit of quarterback this year for Bergen Catholic. Obviously plays defensive back as well. He'll mostly line up at safety for Bergen Catholic, but there's times where he goes and plays press coverage at corner too. He loves to do it all. He's like I said, a super freaky athlete. He's like a legit 6'1", 183. That was his measurement back at camp in May. So it might even be a little more than that now. This is huge for Rutgers, though, because they fought off some really big programs in this one. A lot of Power 5 programs were after him. It seemed like he was a Penn State lean at one point. It seemed like he was a North Carolina lean at one point. There was talk about Wisconsin, who he took an official visit to back in late May, early June. And South Carolina. South Carolina was pushing, too. This is just a crazy good addition for Rutgers. 27 total offers. You got to give a lot of credit here to Marquise Watson. He was the main recruiter here for Sanders. And this not only gets Rutgers a very good prospect or a very good player in general, but you're also getting into the Big North. It's something that they haven't really been able to crack through in Schiano 2.0, honestly. And they had guys like Augie Hoffman and Nuns Campanelli, like the Bergen Catholic head coach and the St. Joe's head coach, but they still weren't able to break through. And now this one, they're finally able to get a good player. And as long as he can produce at Rutgers, I think that it's slowly going to open that seam more and more for Rutgers to get back into the Big North.
Yeah, it is a little surprising that, you had two of the most prestigious head coaches in North Jersey on your staff in the Big North, and you weren't really able to land anybody. So huge kudos to Watson and the staff in general for keeping Kaj Sanders committed as well, because he, like you said, was one of the top players in the state, and he had a pretty damn good senior season as well, playing both sides for Bergen Catholic.
Huge senior year. I think he actually racked up, over 1,000 yards rushing on 126 touches, 17 rushing touchdowns, 35 tackles. Like, he had a great year. Mostly offensive stats, but he obviously is going to play safety at Rutgers.
Early enrollee?
Yes.
Awesome. Next up, we have Gabe Winowich, who is a running back he's originally from Michigan, but he ended up transferring to Notre Dame High School to play alongside AJ Surace. He's listed at 6'1", 220. Tell us a little bit about Gabe Winowich's game.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. You just said his height and weight, and you don't really think running back when you hear that, but he is a massive built running back. He moved out to New Jersey this offseason. He's been playing. He joined Notre Dame High School playing with AJ Surace, a fellow Rutgers commit, who we'll probably get to momentarily. But he's just a really big power back. I don't know if he's I know the big debate on him is we have him listed as an athlete, is if he can play running back at the next level. And I'll be honest, I think he has a higher ceiling as a linebacker, but he does move pretty well as a running back. Maybe not as well as some of the other guys, like the shorter, faster guys, like a Monangai type, or even like an Edd Guerrier that they have committed. And that's probably the reason they have two running backs committed technically. But if you watch his tape, he's a really good player, really good athlete, tough, hard-nosed football player, old school type linebacker when he's on defense. And you look at his offer list, and a lot of people are going to be like, all right, well, what the heck? He's only got Marshall, Maryland, and Rutgers. Yes and no. Technically, that's not true. He does have a lot of offers out there for linebacker. He's playing running back at the next level, so he doesn't like to report those offers, which is fine. That's great and all, but I think personally I would have reported them, made it look a little nicer. But hey, to each their own. But a really good power back, kind of a different type of style of running back than Rutgers is used to. I guess you could kind of say Sam Brown-esque with the same size, but I feel like Sam Brown at that size and his movement, his freshman year at least, are unmatched.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that Gabe Winowich, when you're watching him or seeing pictures of him as a high school kid, he is very developed. He's got a lot of muscle on his frame. He is definitely college ready in terms of his body. Oh, yeah. So will be interesting to see if he makes a splash on the field this year in 2024. Is he also an early enrollee?
Yes, he will be. He is also a former lacrosse player, so he's really not afraid of that contact. And you watch his tape, you kind of can figure that one out yourself.
Yep. So next up is his high school teammate, AJ Surace. This is a kid who it seemed like was very close with Sean Gleason, and I think a lot of us thought when Gleason left that Rutgers probably would go to another target in terms of quarterbacks, but that was quickly dispelled because he committed very early in the process. He committed in February. This is a kid whose dad is Bob Surace. He's the head coach of Princeton, the football team. 6'2", 195. Tell us a little bit about AJ Surace's game.
High IQ, strong arm, strong understanding of the game of football. Even as a young kid, he's just sitting on Princeton sidelines. His coach, or his dad, I shouldn't say his coach, his dad used to tell me that he was just sitting there and just trying to understand the game more and learn more and more about it. I've gotten a chance to watch him a couple times this offseason, or I shouldn't say this offseason, this season and the offseason prior. He's just a super accurate kid. Really good on the run, really good size too. I know he's listed 6'2", 195. I think he might be more than that weight wise. He's going to come in and he's going to compete for that job right away. I don't think there's a question about it. But like you mentioned, we all thought once Sean Gleason was gone, that was kind of it. Long shot for him. But Kirk Ciarrocca did almost offer him at Minnesota. There's something weird that happened where Kirk was supposed to fly out to see him in the spring. Or not the spring, the off season to go watch him throw. And he wasn't able to when he was at Minnesota because his flight got canceled, but he was still talking to AJ and there still was some Minnesota interest. So then Kirk gets over to Rutgers and obviously the offer's still there already. And he got him on the campus, watched him throw, blah, blah, blah. And then the rest is really history. But this is a really good get for Rutgers. I think he needs to add some muscle still. And I think a redshirt year will really benefit him, especially with potentially two quarterbacks coming or a new quarterback coming in and competing with Gavin. But yeah, really fundamental, really sound quarterback. I'm a big fan of this kid. And based on, he was actually at the Elite 11 out in State College this offseason. And I think he kind of got screwed a little bit. I feel like he probably should have won that or at least got the invite to the Elite 11. And they ended up giving it to the Penn State commit in Ethan Grunkemeyer, who's a very good quarterback in his own right. But I'm a little shocked they at least didn't give out two invites at that event because he was by far the best quarterback there that day.
That's high praise because the Elite 11 draws the best talent from everywhere in the area. And sometimes these kids, they'll kind of go to multiple Elite 11 camps because they only give out so many Elite 11 invites per camp. So if you don't get it at the one, and you're from Massachusetts and you go to the one at BC, you go to the one at State College next to try and get that invite. So a lot of these kids are showing up multiple times. So to get that kind of praise is huge. Just going over some stats for him. He was 130, or he completed 130 passes out of 188 attempts, which is a 69% nice completion percentage on the season for 1,862 yards, 26 passing touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Then on the ground, something that I don't think he gets enough credit for. He had 107 attempts, 909 yards rushing, and 15 touchdowns on the ground. So this is a true dual threat. Really excited to see how he develops. I agree. I hope he's able to redshirt because very, very few quarterbacks are truly ready as freshmen to come step on the field at the Power 5 level or the Power 4 level at this point.
Yeah.
So I just hope he has the time to really develop the way he needs to and isn't thrown into the fire too early, like far too many Rutgers young quarterbacks before him.
Yeah, we've seen it way too many times. Maybe Tom Savage was the exception, but he I don't think he's he might end up being better than Tom Savage when it's all said and done. But yeah, no, you don't want to throw him out there and God forbid he gets like an Art Sikowski, Ohio State-esque type hit, and then it's like your confidence is broken. But he's a really confident kid, and even just talking him out there, he was actually probably the main recruiter too of this recruiting class. There's always one kid that kind of separates himself amongst the rest, and he's probably that guy because even at that the Under Armour camp up at DePaul Catholic this offseason, he's like, "Yo, who's that wide receiver over there?" And I was like, "Oh, that's so and so. Oh, who's that kid?" And he's like, "All right, I'm gonna go talk to him. I was like, "All right, dude, you do you. Like, let me know what happens. Let me know if you're getting him committed or not." And then like he went out of his way because Korey Duff was at that camp too. He went out of his way to make sure he was throwing to Korey Duff as many times as possible. And they all kind of hit it off. He's been on campus. I want to say this is like a record for like a Rivals profile. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's like 15 different unofficial visits. And I want to say 8 of them were him and Winowich, I forgot to mention, are the only 2 in this class, I think, maybe Kenny Jones too, actually, that visited every single Rutgers home game this year. So
it seemed like
dedicated.
every post you had about weekend visitors had
Mhm.
Winowich and Surace at the top of the
Yeah.
list. So he's been bought in 100% for a long time.
Mhm.
And you love to
And he
see
gets
stuff
here
like that.
January too.
Yep. So he'll have plenty of time to hit the ground running and see how he stacks up. Next two we have are twin brothers, Tyclean Luman and Tychoolhill Luman. So both those guys are in the running for coolest names of the recruiting season. Tell us a little bit about these two. They're both Miami kids, but I think they're originally from Canada. So
yep.
Talk to us about these two.
Yeah, so they transferred into Miami. They bounced around actually quite a bit. They transferred into Miami prior to 2021 season, where they were at Miami International, I think it was, or it's Miami something, and then they transferred to Miami Jackson, and now they finished their senior year at Miami Norland. So they've bounced around quite a bit. They both have legitimate size. They're both around the 6'3", 240, 250 range. I shouldn't say significantly. One's slightly better than the other. I always get this mixed up. I want to say Tyclean is the better one, and Tychoolhill is the one, but they're very similar in play styles. Both defensive ends, edge rushers. They're solid players overall. I don't know. It's weird. Their recruitment was a weird one because I didn't really think Rutgers was in it that much. And again, shout out to Marquise Watson because he hauled them in this summer, and it was a huge get for Rutgers. But they had a lot of SEC offers, and there's a lot of talk that they were going to stay in the SEC area, like Florida, and you can include kind of Florida State in that talk because it's still SEC country, but Florida State's in that weird region, whatever. But yeah, no, I mean, this is a great job by Rutgers to land both of them. You beat out, like I said, several SEC schools. I know Arkansas was pushing pretty hard. Pittsburgh tried to get him on an official visit. Like every school tried to get him on these guys on official visits, and it was literally only Rutgers that was able to do so. And they were kind of a surprise official visit too, because no one really knew going into that first weekend in June they would visit. And then I think it was this Sunday. I remember actually I was at a restaurant with my girlfriend, and all of a sudden I get the phone call, and I'm like, oh, holy shit, they landed both of them. Like pretty damn good kids though. One's ranked 45 in the position rankings. I don't know if the other one's ranked. I think he's 48, 49 or something like that. But very similar play styles. Both really good edge rushers, good hands, good technique. They're still learning the game. And it just kind of adds to your Canada pipeline that it's just ever so growing every year under Schiano.
Yeah, they've really crushed that. And if you just look back over the years with Schiano, they've had so many good Canadian players. The one that comes immediately to mind is Jamal Westerman, but they've had a lot of contributors come from north of the border. So it's a pretty good pipeline to continue on.
Yeah, no kidding.
Next, let's talk about Dahkari Gilley. He is a DB from Jacksonville, Florida, listed at 6'2", 185. Tell us about him.
Track star / again, another kind of super athlete type guy. He kind of plays multiple spots for his high school team. He's played linebacker. He's played slot defender. He's played safety, obviously, and that's where he's going to go to at Rutgers. He's got really good size, a legit 6'2", 185. He was kind of like an under the radar guy when he first committed. He was he didn't have really he had a bunch of offers from like lower level schools. I think his only Power 5 at the time was actually Pittsburgh. I guess UCF's Power 5 now too. I forgot about that. That's a weird one now. Got to remember that. But yeah, no, he came to campus again in June, and it just kind of wrapped it up pretty quickly. His initial ranking was like a 5.5, so like not many people knew about him. We got a new Florida recruiting analyst somewhere in that timeline in John Garcia Jr., and he just really hyped him up. And I was like, all right, I got to go watch this kid's tape again. And I watched him. I'm like, all right, shit, this kid's actually like really athletic for 6'2", 180, 185 range. I don't know how good the comp is down in Jacksonville. I don't know if it's great or not, but Rutgers has done a really good job recruiting there since Schiano's returned, and they found some really under the radar athletes. If you remember last year, Valet Nakun Jr., he's one that came out of that similar area. I think he was Orlando technically, but I'm trying to remember. I think he was Orlando. Whatever. But besides the point, this kid's a really good athlete, lengthy, kind of raw. But Harris Simiak really liked him. Gotten to see him a couple times, and they kind of just locked it up pretty much on that official visit. But he's been to campus once, I think, since that official visit. So definitely going to be an adjustment for any Florida kid to come play in this type of weather up here. So I think probably a redshirt year, but I do think he's a really good high ceiling guy.
Yeah, I agree. Is he going to be an early enrollee?
I believe so, but I don't know what the deal is with his school. Some of those schools are a little tricky to work around, but for the most part, I think majority of this class is going to early enroll. So I'll save you the time from asking me every time.
Sounds good. Next up on the list here, we have Antonio White, who is a DB out of Georgia, the only kid from Georgia this class. Tell us about him.
Yeah, he's an interesting one too, because I feel like we've been saying this about every kid. It seemed like he was going to go elsewhere. He had SEC offers. Kentucky was after him very heavily. Auburn was after him. He actually visited Auburn a couple times during his recruitment, even more so recently. He went with a couple teammates, but we were told it's a little nothing. He also got an offer from Kansas State during his commitment after he committed to Rutgers. But Drew Lascari and Demir Shah are the main recruiters here, and they did a really good job of just locking him down. Another safety prospect at that 6'1", 170 range. Now, we have him listed as safety, and I just said safety, and I kind of regret saying that now because I feel like he's probably going to play cornerback to start because Shiano likes those tall, lengthy, faster cornerbacks. He's another track guy. He's played both sides of the football for his high school team. He missed a couple games this year to start the season, or maybe in the middle of the season, I think it was. But he still had a decent year, but ton of offers. Like a really good kid, good size. Georgia's a very underrated, fertile recruiting ground for most programs, and Rutgers has never really touched it that much. So it's nice to see them kind of start to get involved there and see what they can do.
Awesome. Next up, we have Raynor Andrews, who is an offensive lineman from Florida. Some recent scuttlebutt that he was going to take a visit to Syracuse, which was quickly shot down, but he's listed at 6'6", 315. This is a kid who, from just like a size, speed kind of measurables, seems like kind of a prototypical lineman, but he's a bit raw. Tell us about Raynor Andrews.
Yeah, so if I'm recalling this correctly, I believe he's down in Miami with the Luman brothers, but I believe he's a Bahamas native. I think I got that. Yeah, Bahamas native. He doesn't really know. He didn't know much about the sport of football in general. He transferred into Florida in July or June 2022. And he kind of got into football, and I guess people saw his size, and they were like, "Hey, holy shit! Like that guy, you got to play football. Like I don't care what you do." But yeah, he actually has a basketball background, so he got into football, and he just kind of took off from there. Ton of offers. He's very, very raw still. He's a lineman that's going to take a couple years. You're almost definitely going to redshirt him, especially because you have a tackle already in Holland Pearson. You have a pretty good one coming back in Tyler Needham too. And they're still looking at the portal and stuff like that. But 6'6", 315, like you said, massive dude. He's very close with the Luman brothers, obviously, because they all play in the same high school team. I believe they all have the same trainer as well, so that helps out too. But yeah, there was some scuttlebutt. He was going to visit Syracuse this past weekend or weekend before, whatever it was. But that kind of got shut down pretty quickly. It's a high upside kid. It's one of those kids you kind of just see and kind of hope you can mold them over time. But our Florida guys are, like I said before, they're pretty high on him too. So we'll see what they could do. But I wouldn't count on him to play year 1, year 2. Linemen, I always say probably 3 years minimum before they see the field.
Yeah, no, there's just too many of them need to totally reshape their bodies or get a lot stronger. So when you do see an offensive lineman play as a true freshman, it's all that more impressive, especially on a Power 4 type team. So just a safe assumption in general for those guys.
Yeah,
but
of course.
Next up on the list here, we have Aaris Bethea, who is listed as a defensive tackle. He's listed at 6'3", 250. He is an Erasmus Hall kid who everyone should be familiar with that school since it seems like half the football roster went to Erasmus Hall. I'm joking, but they do send a lot of kids to Rutgers. I believe his older brother Armand Bethea went to Arizona State. I think he might have transferred out of there since then.
Bowling Green, I believe now.
He went to Bowling Green. So tell us a little bit.
There now.
Tell us a little bit about Aaris Bethea.
Yeah, he seems like a smart football player overall. Good length. He's probably going to grow into an interior guy when it's all said and done. But he does line up at end for them as well, and he also lines up with at them at end for on the other side of Caden Brown. So Caden Brown's another guy that Rutgers was on, and we kind of thought it would be the opposite, to be honest. When these recruitments first started, we thought Caden Brown, lock for Rutgers, Aaris Bethea maybe, but now it completely flip-flopped. Really good first step, good strength, good size. Probably needs to turn some of that weight into muscle still, and that's where it's going to be interesting to see how like a guy like Jay Butler will mold him. Good gap responsibility. He just seems like a really solid defensive lineman. Nothing crazy, nothing special. A guy who could develop over time and could be a multi-year starter. At worst, I think he's at least a depth piece. But he's got some violent hands too. Actually, some really good hands. But yeah, I think this is a good one for Rutgers, and you continue that pipeline, like you said, from Erasmus Hall.
And he's listed as a defensive tackle. Is he being brought in as an offensive or a defensive lineman?
Defensive.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we have Montele Johnson, who's a linebacker from Michigan. This is a kid who had a lot of offers and came as a bit of a surprise when he committed to Rutgers, but he's a really big linebacker. I think he's listed at 6'3" in the Rivals database.
I believe
6'2",
so.
225, actually. I'm sorry. Tell us a little bit about this kid.
Yeah, he's interesting. I haven't been able to watch much of him this year because he's missed some time with injuries. But yeah, Rutgers did a really good job of recruiting him, and they kind of see him as more of like a traditional Mike or like potentially a Will, and some I want to say like the kind of the two-way role. We'll put it like that because they see him. They've mentioned edge rusher to him at times too. But yeah, no, I mean as a junior, he had a really productive junior season. He had 102 tackles, 23 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. Like you said, really good size for a linebacker. And I wish we would have been able to see him more this year, but that injury really derailed most of his season. I think he missed the first 8 games or something like that. I believe it was an ankle injury. But yeah, no, I mean a lot of production as a junior, and a lot of people were big fans of him, hence the offer list. And I probably trust Corey Heatherman more than most in terms of having an eye for talent, and he's proven that he can develop everybody and anybody because he made a depleted linebacker room look like there was nothing wrong at all.
Yeah, no, I hope they're able to retain him, but definitely trust him with any linebacker recruit that they bring in.
Plus his high school produces a ton of talent, so it's not like it's some nobody. Like they produce, I think they had 15 Power 5 guys this year or something like that.
Which high school does he go to?
West Bloomfield.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a ton of talent, ton of highly ranked kids. I'm looking now, even in 2025, they have like 3 ranked or 2 ranked. They keep going to UCLA, Colorado, Rutgers, Central Michigan, Penn State, Michigan. Like there's just talent on talent at that school.
Yeah, that's huge. You love getting kids from these top programs because you never know. Montele Johnson might have, a kid he's really close with who's a 2026 who might give Rutgers a stronger look because of having a kid like that on your team.
Yeah, for sure.
Next up, we have Benjamin Black, who's from Charlotte, North Carolina. He's listed at 5'11", 165, so doesn't really have the best size in the world, but he makes up for that with speed. He is one of the fastest kids in the country this year, who a lot of people, from the Southeast had as one of like the most underrated players in the country or in the area. So tell us a little bit about Benjamin Black.
So he's impressive. He's really grown in our rankings over the past couple months. I know Adam Friedman, like the minute he saw Mallard Creek, I think it was early September, late August, whenever their season starts a little earlier in Jersey. But yeah, he saw him playing. He was just like, dude, we gotta upgrade this kid. Like, holy shit. Like he's a superstar athlete. He's a little on the smaller side, like you said, 165, but he'll pack on some weight there. But he's just got that quick twitch ability. He's a kick returner, punt returner for those guys. He has a bunch of a couple returns for touchdowns actually this year. He could technically line up on either side, and he's listed as an athlete. Rutgers is bringing him in as a wide receiver, but with that speed, he almost kind of reminds me of another not DMV. Well, I guess he is a DMV kid, but he almost reminds me of a longer beam type out of high school where he's small, he's skinny, he's fast, but he's got that twitch and that ability. And kind of needs to fix his frame a little bit. I know not much bad weight, but he just doesn't have the weight. And it's a guy like that where you could pack on the pounds, and he could potentially slot in at cornerback at the next level, or keep him at wide receiver, and you have another weapon, a legitimate nice slot receiver too potentially.
This is a kid that Rutgers had to really fight to hold on to because NC State has been trying to get him to flip for months now. He is a kid who took a visit there during the season and was supposed to take an official visit, but I don't believe he ended up taking that.
Nope.
And they wanted him as a cornerback, and I think the main reason Rutgers was able to successfully hold on to him was because they wanted him on offense, and he wants to play offense. So great job by the staff keeping a North Carolina kid committed to Rutgers despite heavy interest from one of the big in-state schools.
Yeah, they pushed very, very heavily. Like that was a tough one for Rutgers. They have to. There's no denying that one, I guess.
Yep. Next up, we have Samarian Robinson, who is a linebacker from Tallahassee, Florida. He's listed as another big linebacker, 6'3", 215. He's a kid Rutgers flipped from UCF. So you're flipping kids from in-state, and a lot of times your head goes to like, oh, it's UCF, they're Conference USA, they're whatever. No, they're a Big 12 team now. They're in one of the big boy conferences. So this is a pretty big poaching out of Florida. Tell us a bit about Samarian Robinson.
Shiesty Sam, as he likes to call himself on Twitter. You just look at him, he's built like a linebacker. He's 6'3", 220, around that range. He's just very, very physical. His tape reminds me a lot of Olakunle Fadakasi's tape, where you just watch it and you're like, dude, this man he's not even playing football. He just wants to hit people. Like he's just a crazy, crazy good football player. Sideline to sideline backer. Really seems like a very nice kid. I've talked to his coaching staff quite a bit about him over the past couple of months because I was afraid like an SEC school was going to come in and poach him because he's that good. But yeah, he seems like he's a very down to earth kid. His like mentor is a former 4-star. I think he was borderline 5-star, and Raylan Wilson, who's at Georgia now, and he really looks up to the kid. And they're both really physically and just mentally great players. I know his coach kind of compared him to Levante David, who he's from the Tampa Bay Bucks, who some of you might remember. I think he still plays, actually. You might. I don't follow the Bucks at all. So,
yeah,
but really fast. Yeah, fast, physical. He can cover. He's just always around the ball, and I'm telling you, this kid might be the hardest hitter on the team. And my favorite quote from his coach when we talked to him this summer was like, "If you want to go to war with anyone, that kid is on my side, and I'm not losing with him there." So. Can't get much more of a thing. I don't even know.
Yeah,
recommendation. Yeah, I can't talk today.
Nah, it's all good. Yeah. So what you're saying is the coach said he's got that dog in him. Great to hear,
there you go.
Especially for a defender.
Harris Simiak went specifically down to Florida to recruit him on multiple occasions too. And the DC doesn't usually recruit that much, or both coordinators usually don't. Like OC obviously is going to go after the quarterback. DC really doesn't go out there recruiting. Harris Simiak made specifically known that he wants this kid. He needs this kid. And that was a big reason and a big selling point for him actually committing or flipping to Rutgers.
Huge. Can't wait to get him on campus. Next up, Edd Guerrier, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He's a running back from Port Charlotte, Florida. Listed at 5'10", 195. He is another guy with a ton of speed. Tell us a little bit about Ed.
Yeah, broke one of the last additions actually for Rutgers, and unranked kid when he committed. Again, great eye for talent for Rutgers here to find him down at Florida at Port Charlotte. Not the biggest high school in the world, but also is now the record holder for most yards in a single season at his high school. So he 1,146 yards this season, 18 touchdowns. He also attempted a pass, but it went for a pick, so we'll just ignore that part. But reminds me of Kyle Monangai kind of in terms of size and just speed and vision. A really good running back. It's hard to gauge how good he could be because his competition isn't the greatest in the world. But he also didn't do any camps really either. So that definitely hurt him a little bit. And that's kind of where most of these offers come from. So like if a kid's not getting, if he's not getting out there and getting the recognition at camps, like people aren't really going to see him and aren't really going to offer. I know his only other offer, I think, was Power 5 offer was Louisville. A bunch of smaller ones like Bowling Green, South Dakota State. I don't know what the hell they're doing down in Florida, but just seems like a really good kid. Again, his coach actually compared him to Josh Jacobs. I'm not going to go that far. I'm going to compare him to Kyle Monangai because I think they're really just versatile, powerful, and fast running backs for their stature. So I think this is a really good fit. And apparently they have a pretty tough culture down there at Port Charlotte, and they compare it to Greg Schiano's program. So I think this might just be a really good fit for Rutgers.
Yeah, you love to hear that. Love to hear guys who are ingrained deeply in a tough culture, because that's what they're going to get when they get on the banks. So
Oh yeah.
they better be used to it in high school. Next up, we have an offensive lineman from Delran, New Jersey, Kenny Jones. He's at 6'5", 305. I believe he was the first commitment of the class. Tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, I was going to say that. We don't really talk about Kenny that much just because it's been so long. He committed in October 2021. We are now in December 2023. It's been over 2 years since he's committed. It's kind of crazy to say that. But yeah, no, I'm sorry, they offered in October 2021.
Yeah, I was going to say, it says here November of 22 is when he committed.
Yeah, so it took him a year to commit. But yeah, no, this is a this is a good get for Rutgers. He's interesting. He's got good size, a nice blocking base. He's really powerful, like first punch in an offensive line, and he also plays defensive line for his high school program too. Not so much his senior year because they wanted him to work more on O line because it's going to be an O lineman. But yeah, no, he's interesting. I don't know how good he's going to be at the next level because he still has to work on that pad level because he's still standing up a little bit too high, it seems like. But he did pretty good at Delran. He's got good size at 6'5", 305. I think he's probably a guard interior guy on the next level. Maybe tackle because Rutgers does tend to shift him sometimes if it's not working out. Like, or I shouldn't even say when it's not working out specifically, but like JD DiRenzo came in as guard. I thought he was a great, phenomenal guard. Moved him to tackle like halfway through the season because you got to make some things work. Mm-hmm. But I'm intrigued to see what Pat Flaherty can do with him. He needs to reshape his body a bit. That's fine. That happens with most linemen. They're going to have to turn some of that into muscle, and they're just going to have to add some more size and add it the correct way, not the wrong way. And again, that's just something Jay Butler is pretty good at. He's good on zone schemes, it looks like, for the most part. His team's not the greatest at Delran, and they don't play the greatest competition where they're located, but he seems like he's got good size, and he doesn't lose battles to the smaller linemen. Like, he's winning the battles he's supposed to. But yeah, I mean, it's a good get. It was the first get for Rutgers, and we'll see how it ends up playing out.
Yeah, first commitment. He is a high school teammate of Kenny Fletcher, the defensive lineman. I believe the first game of the season, Kenny Jones, Delran team played Notre Dame High School, so there was the matchup for the three Rutgers commits. I'm sorry. So this kid is almost certainly going to redshirt and develop as an offensive lineman. As we already said, it's going to take 2 to 3 years minimum for a lot of these guys on the offensive line. So, next up, we have Sam Pilof, who is a linebacker from Middleton, Wisconsin. Actually, one of two commitments from this high school in this class. He's listed at 6'2", 210. This is a guy I think is pretty underrated. I really like his tape. Tell us a little bit about Sam Pilof.
He does it all for his high school team. He plays for a solid high school team in Middleton. I didn't really know much about Wisconsin football until this year because Rutgers really never dove into that territory. But Mike linebacker can play edge, can do just about anything. He needs to add some weight to his frame, but that, like, I basically could say that for just about anyone on this commitment list. Lacrosse player, not afraid of contact, I would argue, loves contact. Similar to Samarian Robinson, where he's just very violent on defense. And that's what you want on your defense and your linebackers specifically too. Really smart, kind of knows the game pretty well, moves really well from sideline to sideline, can cover tight ends if need be. He just seems like a really physical player, a Power 5 prospect for sure. And I'm a little shocked more schools didn't go after him. At one point, it seemed like he was actually, at one point, he was a Penn State lean. And at another point, he was a Wisconsin lean. And then Rutgers ended up getting him. And this is just a really good get for Rutgers. They've shown him a ton of love all the way through. And he's just he's going to be a freak athlete at Rutgers. I love this linebacker room. And I think they're just going to just keep stacking talent on talent on talent. It's almost going to be too much talent. And it's at the point where it's like you kind of can't afford to run the 4-2-5 anymore because you have too many good linebackers.
Yeah, no, this is a kid who put up so many stats too. In 29 high school games, as a varsity player, he had 270 tackles, 37 tackles for loss, 22 sacks, 8 forced fumbles, and he also was returning kicks. This past season, he had 4 kick returns for 245 yards and a touchdown. A very high-level athlete. Another big linebacker, too. If you look, all these guys are 6'2" or bigger, 210 or bigger. So you can clearly see what they're going for. And that also helps when people are asking, like, oh, this linebacker just entered the portal. You think Rutgers would be interested?
Nope.
I think if you look at the size, like a good example is a guy named, I think his name's Jacob Hobbs. He was a linebacker who basically set every record at Holy Cross. He was, multiple time first team All-American, but I think he's listed at 6 feet tall, like 6 feet, like 240. He's just too small, I think, for Rutgers' taste. So that's always helpful to see what they're recruiting in high school to kind of see if they would work out in terms of the staff's evaluations. Next up is Monte Keener, who's a tight end from Michigan. So they hit Michigan hard this year, listed at 6'6", 215. Tell us a little bit about Monte Keener.
Yeah, great relationship with Andy Ulrich. That's all I could keep hearing when I was talking to him. Andy Ulrich is becoming a very underrated recruiter. I feel like he doesn't get talked about enough. But yeah, Rutgers went out, saw him a couple times in spring eval period. Kind of got in a little bit, I want to say a little later than most, I think. Actually, I forget when they offered him. I shouldn't say actually. I think it was early, actually. I think they offered him in February, and he kind of exploded on the scene after getting to a couple camps because he added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You get the point. He added about like 15 plus offers since February, from February to April. Really interesting kid. I actually thought he might stay out in the Midwest and go to like a Minnesota who offered, and he took a visit to as well. But yeah, Rutgers got on the campus in late April, and that basically just sealed the deal. Brought him campus a couple other times. He's a good route runner, pretty solid blocker, and I think that's kind of where we're going with most of these tight ends. He has a big frame at 6'6", 215, and it seems like he's a pretty solid catch radius. But for the most part, I feel like these guys are going to be blockers going forward, and he's pretty good at that. So.
Yeah, same thing as offensive linemen, though. Most tight ends do not make an early impact, so this is a kid I expect to redshirt and just kind of see how he develops. It seems like Rutgers also has a type in terms of tight ends, in terms of size, speed, or size and frame. Almost no tight end Rutgers is recruiting is under 6'5". If you just kind of look at the last few classes, from Mike Higgins to Victor Konopka to I forget his first name, but the tight end Blake. Like all these guys are huge, big frame dude. Logan Blake, yep. So another thing to kind of pay attention to, if there's a 6'3" tight end who goes into the portal, Rutgers probably will not show interest.
Yeah, he played a lot of defense too. Like he had an interception, 33 tackles, pass deflection, forced fumble, and one of one on extra points.
Wow. So he's
emergency kicker.
It's always funny to see how athletic all these guys are. Most of them have played quarterback at some point. They've kicked, punted, kick returned. It's wild.
Yeah, insane.
Next up, we have Matthew Ogunniyi, who is listed at 6'5", 200 pounds. He's a tight end from Springdale, Maryland. Tell us a little bit about this kid.
Now, he's a little different. He's more of a receiving tight end. I think we actually had him listed as a receiver when he committed, but he's coming to Rutgers as a tight end. He's 6'5", 200. So, again, probably going to have to pack on some pounds. Missed a lot of time this season due to injury. I think he only played like in 2 or 3 games. In those 2-3 games, he had 5 receptions for 63 yards and 2 2-point conversions, which is a weird stat in its own right. But yeah, he's more of a receiver threat. He's got a long wingspan. You could see it. His arms are long as hell. But yeah, no, he seems like more of a developmental tight end prospect. It could be a future like receiving type tight end, I think, for Rutgers. They didn't have a ton of competition here, but again, I think his main offers were from like West Virginia, Texas A&M, Temple, James Madison, a lot of smaller schools after that. But Andy Ulrich, he evaluated him, he liked him, and he locked him up. And he kind of quietly moved up the rankings when we got to see him a little bit, but he also got screwed in his high school season. You can debate the screwed part, I guess, but they got kicked out of playoffs in the middle of playoffs because apparently they had a 5th-year guy on their team, and it was some weird scenario where the guy played 5 years of high school football and he was playing on a public school team, and it's like you can't really do that, But yeah, they like kicked him out of playoffs, so we didn't really get to see much, which sucks between that and an injury because we probably would have got like 2 or 3 more games out of him on tape at least. But he seems like a pretty solid player, and we'll wait and see how he develops.
Yeah, not a whole lot more to say there.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Isaiah Crumpler, who is another North Carolina kid. He is listed at 6'1", 180. He is the younger half brother of former NFL tight end Algie Crumpler, if you remember that name. Isaiah Crumpler's dad also played in college and I believe the NFL. So tell us a little bit about Isaiah Crumpler.
Yeah, so obviously the NFL bloodlines are there. I believe, I got to find the stats again, but I believe he had a pretty good senior season. He's tall, he's lengthy. I actually thought he might be a tight end at the next level, to be honest with you. But he's coming in as a wide receiver. No, I'm thinking of someone else. Yeah, never mind. Ignore the tight end thing. Thinking of someone totally different. But yeah, no, I mean, they go down to North Carolina again. This is going to be a new stomping ground for them, it seems like, because Dave Brock's got some serious ties from his time down at North Carolina. Really solid player, pro level family bloodlines that have helped him kind of develop his game. I was kind of intrigued to see where they would put him. I actually argued that we probably should list him as an athlete because I think he could play safety at the next level. But he's going to come in as a wide receiver first. But he's open to playing anything. He's played safety and wide receiver for his high school team. He's not going to enroll until the summer. So there's that little note there. But yeah, no, I mean, he's a solid player. He looks a little slower in some of his route running and stuff like that, but I think he'll be okay. And I'm really intrigued just because I just the NFL bloodlines are huge. Like it's to get the Crumplers on campus, and Algie Crumpler is like one of the best ever. Maybe not best ever, but he's up there.
He was one of the best tight ends during the peak of his career. Yeah, so we'll give him that. He had some big years with Michael Vick down in Atlanta. So
seems like a good athlete.
Yep. Next up on the list here, we have Elijah King, who's a defensive end from Ohio. He's listed at 6'6", 230. This is another kid who I believe Rutgers didn't really seem like they were going to land, and then they kind of pulled him in late. So tell us a little bit about Elijah King.
Yeah, seemed like he was all Purdue, which is interesting because he committed following a Purdue visit, which is a little weird, I guess. But that's what happens when a new coach goes up against a veteran coaching staff like Rutgers has. Iowa made a significant push for him. It really seemed like he was all about staying in the Midwest, and it just ended up in Rutgers' favor in the end. They sold him on the visit. It was more about the level of comfort with the coaching staff. It's just he's a really interesting player. He has an older brother that plays for TCU, but now is at Pitt, I think. It's hard to keep track of all these kids because they transfer now. But yeah, no, I mean, he's got a couple. I don't really know much about him, to be honest. I'm looking at it as a 6'6", 230. I'm trying to remember because these kids committed so long ago. It's back in June, and he's skinny. He's the 230 range. He needs to pack on some pounds, but he has good. He's got good length for an edge rusher. He should be able to get around those offensive tackles, especially the slower ones. One of the best kids in Ohio. Yeah, there's really not a whole lot I know about him and his case, but I know our Midwest guy, or former Midwest guy, I should say, in Quint Cosgrove, kind of liked him quite a bit. And again, this is Marquise Watson's hands all over it. Like, this man has dominated the recruiting trail this cycle for Rutgers, and you just got to goes to show you how good of a recruiter he truly is. He's able to pull these guys, especially when they're all looking elsewhere. Like Luman's looking elsewhere, like they're going SEC, and then all of a sudden, this kid looks like he's going Iowa or Purdue. And he just lands them quickly and gets them on board, and they've been solid ever since.
Yeah, he's another guy who probably needs at least to redshirt to bulk up a little bit, but he's got the size and the frame to really potentially be a really good defensive end for Rutgers. Next up, we have Noah Shaw, who we have listed as an athlete, but he's another North Carolina kid listed at 6'1", 195. Where is Noah Shaw coming into play?
He is coming into play a hybrid safety-ish type role, linebacker, whatever you want to call it. He was actually listed originally as a linebacker, but he's going to come in as a safety to start, it seems like. We'll see if it stays that way, if he packs on the pounds. He's already 6'1", 195. But like you said before, they like their linebackers a little bit bigger than that, like in the 6'3", 6'4 range, kind of. I mean, just look at I know his coach said this, and I think this might be a little bit of a reach, a little bit. He compared him to Isaiah Simmons from Clemson, the Giants linebacker currently. I mean, if he's that good, great, phenomenal. But he compared him in terms of his hybrid style where he can kind of play everything. Now, I don't see him doing what Isaiah Simmons does and playing on the edge sometimes. I think he could shift between that linebacker DB type role, almost like a Christian Isian, where it's like a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage type safety. But yeah, no, I mean, he seems like a pretty solid kid. He's built like a linebacker, clearly. He's got really, really good speed. Yeah, I mean, I think this is just a solid get for Rutgers. It was a quiet get, too, because not many people talked about it, but it seemed like he was going to Duke at one point. It seemed like he was going to Missouri at one point. And then Rutgers just comes in, swoops in, and the rest is kind of history.
Interesting. Yeah, another kid who kind of just wait for a lot of these kids to get on campus because you don't really know a whole lot. If he's playing some kind of hybrid role, you know, similar to maybe what Christian Isian played or what Flip Dixon kind of plays for us. Flip is more of a true safety, but he can step down into the box and hit with the best of them. So that'd be interesting to see how he lines up for Rutgers. Next up, we have Kevin Levy, who is listed as wide receiver. He's from West Palm Beach, Florida. He's listed at 6 feet tall, 180 pounds. What's he coming into play for Rutgers?
He is coming in as a cornerback. Got to fix that one too, actually. Two-way, kind of insane playmaker type player. He's just really fast, a lot of speed. I forget his exact 100-meter dash time, but it was something in the tens. I can't remember exactly. Most schools actually liked him as a DB over a wide receiver. But that speed's going to be hard to keep off the offensive side of the ball. It's similar to like Benjamin Black, who's actually coming in as a receiver, but could play either side. Pretty solid frame. There was a lot of talk that he was not going to end up at Rutgers, and this is who was it? It was Florida State, Florida, and Illinois and Louisville were the four that were after him the most. They all got him on visits, and it seemed like he was going to go to one of them. And then all of a sudden, because I think Rutgers had the first official visit. And when you have the first official visit out of 4 or 5 schools, you're probably most likely not going to land that kid based on the past and everyone else doing similar things. But I think they landed him in July. It was like a random Saturday. And I got a phone call like, yeah, Kevin Levy. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. All right, cool. Whatever. But more and more I watch his tape. The speed on it's going to be so hard to keep on off the offensive side of the ball. He's just too quick. He breaks the top off of the defense. This is actually a kid I've been advocating that needs a higher ranking. Like, it drives me nuts that he's a 5.5. But he needs to be at least like a 5.6, 5.7. Like, I'm not claiming he should be a 4-star, but I'm claiming he should be a lot closer than that. Plays for Cardinal Newman, one of the better high schools down in Florida, in that area specifically in Palm Beach. But this is a really, really good get for Rutgers, and I'm a little shocked they were able to hold on to him. I thought a lot of schools were going to start calling afterwards. And I mean, they did, don't get me wrong, but it's just, this staff just does a really good job of building a foundation with these kids and building relationships and just not letting them leave, basically.
Yeah. And that's the sign of a true recruiter. I remember, so Bill Simmons does a podcast and he has Doc Rivers as one of his guests that he has on for basketball season, like probably every other week. And he was talking about when he was recruiting, this is a long time ago, when he was recruiting Tim Duncan to join the Orlando Magic back in probably 2000. And he called up John Calipari and said, I need help, talk to me about like some things I should definitely do when recruiting this guy. And he said he's coming. He said, yeah, he said he's coming. He's like, do you still have him on campus? And he's like, no, he's gone. He's like, well, you're not going to get him then. You have to get him to commit on campus. And that's a big thing for these recruiters that Rutgers has. They basically don't take no for an answer, and they make sure to lock guys up before they leave, whether it be on campus, whether that be at a kid's home. Like, you can't just leave them lingering out there. And Rutgers has done a really good job closing on a lot of these kids.
Of course.
The last player in this class, though, of 2024 is Carter Kadow. He's an offensive lineman, also from Middleton, Wisconsin. He's listed at 6'7", 260. Big framed kid. Tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, he came to campus this summer with Sam Pilof for a visit during the 7-on-7 tournament that Rutgers hosts every summer. He came over to campus. He did a workout in front of the staff, specifically worked out one-on-one with Pat Flaherty, and that was kind of it. He's a former tight end, converted offensive tackle, so he's very lean. He's going to need to pack on some pounds. Kind of a little bit opposite of what Rutgers has done in the past. Like, they've had guys like Tariq Cole, Holland Pierce, where they're like kind of need to lose weight. This kid needs to pack on that weight that they lost. But yeah, no, they liked his technique. They thought he was pretty good, pretty powerful, kind of explosive out of his stance. And I mean, I think we can all say we probably trust Flaherty more than 95% of offensive line coaches in the country, especially when he made chicken salad out of chicken shit this year. So I think I think it's going to be an interesting player. But again, offensive line and a guy that's converting from tight end that needs to pack on 40 pounds, I think we're talking 3 years minimum until we see him.
Yeah, like we've talked about, that's kind of how most offensive linemen go. They're almost all going to need a pretty significant amount of time to develop into guys that can actually make an impact. Because you also got to think, defensive linemen they're facing, they're, for the most part, 21, 22, 23-year-old guys, sometimes even 24-year-olds if you're talking about guys who are taking advantage of that COVID year. So it's essentially men against boys, so you need to be able to combat that. That is the entire class. That is the class of 2024, all 23 guys. I hope that you all enjoyed it, breaking down each player, because, I mean, I forgot about half these guys, and we've done individual podcasts for all of them.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool to go through that list again and be refreshed on the players. Is there anything else you wanted to hit on before we head out today, Rich?
I mean, another top 40 recruiting class for Greg Schiano and crew. It's a pretty good one. Probably, arguably his best since his return.
Yeah, I'd agree.
You can probably say that. I don't know how much longer we're going to see these recruiting classes hit over the 20 mark. I think it's going to start shifting, and you're seeing it now with some other schools. Some schools are starting to tell high school kids. I've talked to coaches specifically that have told me, yeah, like he's a Power 5 kid, but like, for example, an ACC school told me that like they're only taking 15 this year from high school because the portal is the way of recruiting now. It's the way of life. And it's such an easy way to upgrade your team, and high school recruiting is starting to dumb down more and more. And that's why we have the comprehensive team rankings and stuff like that. It's definitely going to be interesting to watch how things reveal themselves going forward. I guess technically there could be another addition or two because Schiano is very sneaky with the signing day surprises. So keep an eye out for that. Technically Sage Claudius was part of this class too, if you guys remember.
Yep.
A 2024 kid and enrolled in summer, like immediately. And he was a 5.73 star. So that would have given it a little bit more of a bump too. But really good class. They dipped in so many different areas. Some of the recruiters are starting to emerge as like ace recruiters. Andrew Ulrich is starting to look pretty damn good as a recruiter. You're seeing Corey Heatherman go out and land a pretty damn good linebacker class. Marquise Watson had a hell of a haul, and you get a good quarterback. This is the first time in a couple years I feel like we're very confident in this quarterback at Rutgers. Like AJ Surace is going to be a full blown stud. I don't think there's any way or rhyme or reason that he shouldn't be.
Yeah, excited to see him. Excited to just see all these guys, because when you get a new class of kids, there's always going to be one or two guys who are just like, holy crap, who's that? Like this past year, I feel like we can talk about it now. In spring, that was Ian Strong, where everybody knew who he was, but he just looked like the best receiver out there. And I know we were dealing with some injuries with Quay Jackson, and Seam Brantley wasn't practicing, Chris Long, but still, it's fun to see these guys for the first few days that they're actually on a field, because there's going to be guys who surprise you. It's going to be guys who are bigger than you expect, faster than you expect, who just can kind of fight through adversity more, because that's what a lot of this camp is. It's a drag to go through, an entire training camp, an entire spring practice period. And it's going to be guys who can fight through injuries. There's going to be guys who, live for this more than others. So it's exciting to see them on the field.
It's huge.
But for me and Richie, thanks for listening, guys. It's been another edition of the Night Report podcast. Signing off.